Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our pre-session town hall. I apologize, we had a little bit of technical difficulty getting the live stream up on Facebook. Now you have to take like this back end way to do it, so it takes us a little bit longer to go live. Probably most of you just joined via the link. But this is an opportunity for us to get together, right before session. I think we've done this every session. We'll do two more. One right in the middle, and then one following. The session is kind of like a wrap up as we close out. But this is a chance for us to tell you exactly what we have coming, not just from our office's priorities, but for the state and what to look out for from your state government as we head into the 90-day session. Okay, still sitting in on economic matters. I'm humbled and fortunate enough to be the vice chair of the committee. CT Wilson is the chair from Charles County. And together, Southern Maryland really does drive economic policy for the entire state of Maryland. For those of you who have been paying attention, last year, really heading into this year, the number one sector in Maryland's economy now is defense contracting. It kind of went from 3 and leapfrogged itself all the way to number 1. So I know that the presence, obviously here in St. Mary's and tied to Pax River, that the base has, but it's really the state. We have 11 military installations. Fort Meade is the largest. Andrews Air Force Base. Prince George's is also quite large economic engine, along with Aberdeen Proving Ground. But there's still a ton of economic boost coming from Pax River, coming from Indian Head, that both myself and Chair Wilson are very familiar with. And that kind of guides us as we go through the session and making decisions across the board for the entire state, because I'm pretty confident that what happens in St. Mary's or in Charles's economy is going to be felt by any of those other communities that hold a base as their largest economic driver. First, we'll just rehash what happened last session. After 6 very long years, we finally got through the indecent exposure within the sight of a minor. And essentially, the bill increased the penalty, and that bill stemmed from an incident here in St. Mary's, where the offender was basically given a slap on the wrist. They weren't removed from their clearance. They were able to move to another community, still have their clearance, and then were able to attain another 6-figure salary. Really, why they just had a minor crime against them, which really involved a child, and it was a pretty illicit incident. So perseverance paid off. Super happy for the advocates and the community members who worked with me for the whole time, almost 7 years, because this came up prior to us going in. And a special thanks to Senator Bailey, who was the crossfile and helped get it through the finish line. Frankly, should have been through in 2023, but you can go back and watch what happened the last 5 minutes of session, and we were the next bill to get across the desk. So 1 more year, we got it done, and I'm super excited about that one. We did the Charlotte Hall cleanup bill, which basically has more, it empowers government to be more responsive to any future elder abuse discovered at state-owned nursing homes like Charlotte Hall. And we're all very familiar in the community with what took place at Charlotte Hall. We want to prevent that from happening. Quick side note, if you have any questions, we'll do a Q&A at the end. You can just pop them into the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end. I see some people messaging me now. Apologize, I should have made that admin note in the beginning. Additionally, I think the last 2 things, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in 2025 as it comes up, but really energy. So energy policy is something that I have just immersed myself in since I've been in the legislature. Obviously, it is a part of economic matters because you have a whole host of categories that fall underneath our purview. But I am also the chair of the Public Utilities Subcommittee. And so I think that when we get to the 2025 priorities, there's two parallel tracks there. One is the budget and the other is energy. But the energy topic is ongoing. And as much as taxes, I think that it probably impacts your pocketbooks, wallets, however you want to phrase that, more in a month-to-month basis than state taxes do. And we are seeing an increase in costs across the board for energy. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And we tried to curtail some of them in 2024. The first, we required all the electric companies to apply for federal funding so that they could improve reliability and efficiency across the grid. And so we made all of our utilities go after the federal funds before taking the lazy approach and just saying, well, we got to update the grid. Let's just charge the ratepayers. And so, there are pools of money that are set aside at the federal level specifically for this. And what we found, not SMECO, we're very lucky that we have SMECO, but it still impacts us statewide when the other utilities don't go after the funds. But that pool of money, we just would let it go. And other states, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, will go grab this money, put it into their grid, and Maryland would never recoup any of the money or the tax dollars that they sent to Washington, D.C. and got set aside in a pot specifically for this. What our utilities decided to do was just let's just take the lazy approach, go to the Public Service Commission and ask the ratepayers of Maryland essentially to double pay in some instances. So we curtailed that practice. The second is probably the biggest piece of legislation I will pass in my entire time in the legislature. It dealt with retail energy supply. And so it put a ton of guardrails around retail energy supply and their abusive practices. Just a side note here, if you get your SMECO bill, make sure you confirm you are on standard offer service. It's called SOS, and you haven't signed up for some other random company to provide you your electricity. Most people don't realize this. Your utility company is in charge of distribution for the most part. They can also procure energy for you because that is the second side, right? So there's distribution and then there's the actual electron itself. The way we regulate the utilities, they provide you that electron essentially at cost. And so there's no real tangible benefit in many cases to be outside of SMECO. So it is a tidbit that could save you a little bit of money. Most of you, I would venture to guess, you are on SMECO. Or excuse me, you're on SOS through SMECO. We have seen a drastic reduction in numbers of people who were on third-party retail supply, but that's going to save Marylanders over $200 million each and every year. Local funding, we got $2.1 million for St. Mary's, or excuse me, St. Mary's College of Maryland. Another $2 million for Historic St. Mary's. And then, the important ones kind of are always a little bit further down the list, but the most important one here, I think, is actually the one that is last. And that's $50,000 for a renovation for a bathroom facility for Three Oaks Center. And that's going to go to meeting our homeless population and their needs. It's not necessarily even homeless. It's those that are at the margins. Gives them an opportunity to use the bathroom, to take a shower, and provides them dignity. And a lot of times what we found when we were talking to the individuals who, were actually going to utilize it is, hey, I just want a place to shower so I can go to a job interview and look professional. Or, I haven't taken a shower in 6 months. It would be nice to have a shower just to have a little bit of dignity in my life. And so we're excited about it. Sasha at Three Oaks should really be commended for her work there. We're still working on them to get the funding released, but I know that the project is planned to move forward. And it's, just an overall good thing, I think, for our community, especially those for the least amongst us, as well as I think people like Sasha, they deserve a win. I mean, she busts her tail for us in the community, and we're very lucky, fortunate, and thankful to have her. Okay. Let's kind of talk through the 2025 session. I am sure most of you have seen the headlines. I am going to tie the first and third bullets together. But on one hand, you are going to see the budget moving. And that is going to probably dominate every newspaper for the next, I would venture to guess, 75 days. And then on the other hand, or the other lane, you will see energy policy. I can tell you I will be leading in that other lane. That's probably not going to get nearly as much press. But let's kind of talk through the budget, talk through some of the numbers, and kind of make sure everybody is flat as we discuss this. And I kind of parsed through it today, made a couple notes, kind of some of the things that we want to touch on. But the bottom line is, in Maryland, constitutionally, the only thing the legislature has to do, the only thing we have to do is pass a balanced budget. I don't have to do anything else in Annapolis, constitutionally, but I have to pass a budget that is balanced. And right now, heading into next fiscal year, we're about $1 billion short. In 2026 and 2027, that grows to just shy of about $3 billion. Not going to go through all the math, but as far out as the projections go, is 2030, and you're going to be just shy of $6 billion short. Not going to sugarcoat it. It's bleak. There are a whole host of reasons for that. And I think people are just going to make this out to be the easy button, which is the most recent news coming through, is the blueprint. And we're going to talk about that. But there are a whole host of reasons on how the state by 2030 can only pay about 85% of its bills. The first is after COVID struck, there was this huge influx of federal dollars, and enrollment, well, there was funding for Medicaid. As the economy went down and really began to spiral, more people qualified for that Medicaid. And that is the largest share right now, making up that deficit. Now, when we were in 2021, 2022, Medicaid enrollment was right around just shy of about 10%. It was about 9.8%. It was growing. Today, it's right around 3.4%. Additionally, unemployment is significantly lower. And so it's a sign that the economy is doing better and has improved over the past 4 years. But we haven't necessarily seen the Medicaid enrollment go back to what it was pre-COVID. And so that is a huge driver of your expenditures. Additionally, Medicaid costs more because of things like, healthcare profits. Despite labor in the healthcare industry going up, profits went up. And so that exasperates some of the problems. I think that pandemic impact relief funds, they have pretty much dried up. So there's less money coming in from the feds. So there's not as much federal matching dollars to keep up with the state budget pressures. And you still have a whole host of people on there, and the state is expected to pick up the tab. I think that some things that maybe we could learn from is at the time of the pandemic, we expanded eligibility requirements, and that makes a lot of sense. However, we want to make sure that those eligibility requirements should still remain in effect as the economy is somewhat normalized. And so for all those kinds of reasons, Medicaid has gone just up in cost. The enrollment numbers have gone up. The federal dollars have decreased, and the state's pressure to meet that has increased. And that's the largest, I think, the largest driver of how we ended up where we are today. Just a side note, expenditures. So when you do all of your budgets, Department of Legislative Services, they have a budgeting team. They forecast it. It's not political. You are probably more familiar with the CBO, which is the Congressional Budget Office. We have essentially the same thing at the state level. When they did their projections in, let's just say 18, 19, 20, this is nobody's fault, by the way. They projected Maryland's economy to grow at a steady 6%. Since about 2020, since COVID, Maryland's economy has grown on average 3%. At the same time, expenditures didn't adjust. So expenditures were slated for a 6% annual growth. So you have the economy only growing half as much as projected, and the expenditures held at that constant growth rate. So that leads to more issues. This is not something that I just think, you know, you're going to be able to have a one-time shot in the arm. And we'll come back to those and talk about that in a second. Then I want to talk about the blueprint, because this is going to, everybody, this is like, yes, this is part of it. But people just think that this is the only part of it. And, you know, somehow funding public education is the only reason we're in this hole. Is very far from the truth. The blueprint does make up a portion of the deficit. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. I just don't think it is what everybody thinks it is. There are really three components to the blueprint where you can make any significant savings. I hesitate to call them savings, where you could make any budgetary changes that would have a statistical impact on our budget forecast and fiscal status. The first, concentration of poverty grants. So are we going to really tell and take away grants from the communities, or additional funding from the communities that need it the most? The second is a political question, and is, are you going to take away teachers' pay raises? Because, I mean, the teachers came out and overwhelmingly supported those of us in office right now. And that would be a very hard thing to walk back from the governor's office. And then the third, which I do think that there is some daylight, at least in the short term, and that's mandatory or universal pre-K. We, as a state, when we put the policy into place, we're going to partner with private pre-K, private companies, you know, daycares alike, to put in programming, as long as they met the state requirement, so that we had enough seats to fill all these kids, because we couldn't just expand the schools overnight. There has been a little bit of a struggle to get that going. It is still going to happen. I don't know that that necessarily is going to happen next year. That may get delayed. That is about the only part that I could see getting delayed. But outside of that, there is, well, the governor, I mean, it's the governor's budget, starts with the governor. I have not seen everything yet. But there are talks that there have been $150 million of trimming around all the state agencies. But $150 million is about $850 million short of where we need to be. And so I am sure that there are going to be a whole host of tax provisions and packages across the board to try to address what those deficits are. I am not at the very moment aware of what that package looks like. I can kind of step back and take a guess based on previous years. There was a service tax package. I want to say 2 of the last 3 years, maybe 3 of the last 4. There is combined reporting, which basically says to all these multi-state companies, you don't get to offload revenue in a different state and capture it in a different state. Maryland would say, hey, listen, if you're operating in Maryland and the business is conducted in Maryland, then we're going to capture all that revenue. It is a loophole that corporations can utilize to report revenue outside of Maryland's jurisdiction. And Maryland's budget doesn't necessarily capture that money, which is unfortunate. And frankly, to the small businesses and even some of the big businesses that are still doing business here, you want to level that playing field. The people who are running a company in Maryland, paying Maryland taxes, employing Marylanders, and they're doing their fair share, and they're trying to make it, they should be put on the same footing as, I'm not going to pick your bad guy, but a multi-state corporation that is basically taking from Marylanders and circumventing the budget process and putting more of a burden on our citizens. So they are some of the types of proposals that we could see come forward. But the bottom line is we need a long-term solution. And we are looking for leadership from the governor's office, and we are looking for leadership from the Senate, because frankly, I will defend the House and the Speaker and Ben Barnes and the Speaker, Chair Barnes, Chair Atterbury, for their work around the topic, because they've been willing to engage and have difficult conversations around the topic. I think the one unknown when all this was put together was a Trump presidency. And I think that the way that that could impact us is Trump has vowed, and I'm not, he has said this on multiple occasions, that he plans to, and I'll use his words, purge federal employees and move federal agencies outside of Washington, D.C. Whether you agree with that or don't agree with that, here nor there. I'm not going to debate that at the moment. But what I can tell you is, if you relocate federal agencies outside of Washington, D.C., i.e. specifically Montgomery County, that would hurt the budget. And that would put Maryland at a significant disadvantage. And for those of us who remain, our tax burden would be significantly increased. I do not think that that would be a good thing for the state of Maryland. Then just one caveat, and I don't know how this would happen, right? But the FBI headquarters that was supposed to go in Prince George's County, I think it's Greenbelt, which was Congressman Hoyer working for that for the better part of 15 years. And the replacement of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, I would think that those funding streamlines, I don't know. I don't know what that means at the congressional level. Thankfully, we still have Steny. And I'm sure he's the ranking member on House Appropriations and probably still has some say. But it is certainly something that we need to be focused on and concerned on. Then I won't really touch too much on artificial intelligence. It's kind of fading off, but I do want to talk about energy policy. So right now, for a whole host of reasons, energy costs have gone up significantly over the past year. And I know what is coming, and it is not favorable, let's just put it that way, on our SMECO bills. It's nothing SMECO did, so we don't have to reach out to SMECO and freak out. But on that delivery side, or excuse me, on the cost of energy side, the capacity markets, which is essentially how everybody bids into a huge market and figures out the rate for what we will all pay if you're on standard offer service, shot up quite a bit. There are a whole host of reasons for that, but the bottom line to you is Maryland imports 60% of its energy. So it is not a favorable position to be in. And what we would like to do is to come up with an actual comprehensive plan to make Maryland, I will say energy independent, but that is not technically the proper phrasing. We want to make sure that we have adequate resources, 100% of the energy that we consume produced here in Maryland. I think that the only way to do that, well, first off, energy is like your stock portfolio. You're going to have a blend, right? I mean, I'm sure some of you are just only into Bitcoin, but the truth is you should have money in S&P 500s. You should have, some in the blue chip stocks, maybe a couple, money market accounts, but the bottom line is, or treasuries, excuse me, the bottom line is you want to diversify. And we are trying to, diversify across the board, but 30% of the energy comes from Calvert Cliffs. And I'm going to touch on Calvert Cliffs here at the end. But after that, you have a gas powered plant that's only running at half capacity. We haven't had any new energy built here in, I don't know, I was 4. And wind is taking significantly longer because of regulatory hurdles. And frankly, Trump is about to come in office, so I don't even know where that lands. But they're taking forever to come online. And solar it is a piece of the equation. I think that the next solution here is going to the next generation nuclear reactors. And I know that that kind of catches some people off guard, but I encourage you to look into either Bill Gates' company or X Energy, just the letter X Energy, and they're out of Rockville. They are the two companies that got innovative grants that will build the next third generation nuclear reactor. There's no water running through it. It is totally different technology. And the uranium, which burns at whatever temperature, I'm not a scientist, is completely encapsulated by graphite, which burns at a much higher temperature. Meltdown is not really a thing in these new reactors. And they are huge enclosed buildings that look like just, a brick building without any windows. If there were to be some sort of quote unquote meltdown, you would just walk out and close the door. And that would be all that is required to completely contain whatever harmful radiation comes out of there. Additionally, for those of you who are across the bridge and live near, Calvert Cliffs, I'm sure some of you are within the meltdown range. You've had the pills, or, you got a weird tick because you live next to it your whole life. These things only have a standoff of about 4 football fields. So the standoff distance is not as much either, but the technology is newer. Both companies do it very similarly. There's slight differences within the technology, but we would be trying to bring a whole host of those in a fleet online. It is not going to happen overnight. This is not going to be a 2026. All of a sudden, there's a nuclear plant next to your house. That is not how this is going to work. It's going to take some time. Additionally, Pax River was selected by the DoD. This is totally separate of anything we are looking at doing, to be one of the small modular reactor sites. So we may very well get our own SMR in St. Mary's through the DoD. I know it can be a little bit, anxious. I guess there's some angst around the topic, but this is not some 1970s technology. Georgia, the state of Georgia, just decided to build a Generation 2 reactor. They were $10 billion over cost, and about 50 years over the timeline. That is not what we are looking to do. We are looking to build something very specific in a fleet with a strategic plan and policy, and we are looking to regulate the costs of that as well. And that is something that we will kind of be working through as we go through, the session in terms of energy. Okay, these are some of the bills that we are working on specifically, and I will not read through all of them, but we're just trying to create a streamlined process for VA benefits and for eligibility. So applicants no longer have to complete some crazy, 4-month application process to receive veteran benefits, if they're a dependent. The other, you can read the rest. Basically, what we're just saying is if you have a will, husband and wife, we just want both parties to be independent of the other party with another witness when they sign. It's been brought to our attention on 3 occasions now, that essentially husband and wife go in. Oddly enough, all 3 incidents, they've been remarried. They go in, and the husband wants the wife to change the will to give her entire estate to his children. The wife goes along with most of it, and as soon as he walks out the room, she tells the attorney. And the attorney, in most of those instances, can tell that there is something wrong, but it's a very awkward position for the attorney to be in. And so what we're just trying to do is separate them at the table. So, they can go through the whole process together, but when they go to sign, they sign with a different witness there. And then we're going to talk about data centers. So, for those of you who are not familiar, data centers, and you should Google this and read some articles. This is becoming, I hesitate to call it a major industry. Major companies, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons, are building data centers all across the US. Maryland has decided, we don't have any just yet. We have a couple in the pipeline. There have been some pushes from the administration to bring more online. I can tell you that I am not necessarily in favor of that, just carte blanche. When they come here, there should be some regulations around it. It's not just plop up a data center and siphon off all of Maryland's power. So here's what we're trying to get at, and this is what is actually happening. At Calvert Cliffs, no, go back to all the conversation we just talked about Maryland's energy policy. At Calvert Cliffs, that is 30% of the state's energy. They want to co-locate a data center that would take off half, so 15% of the state's energy off the grid. What does that mean for the rest of us? I don't know. It would A, cost more money to procure more energy from out of state. Additionally, it means more distribution, which you should Google the Piedmont line, which is a huge transmission line where they just go right through farmland for miles and miles and miles to deliver the energy. We would need more transmission, which is a very contentious process. I mean, you are taking somebody's land to put these things up. And frankly, what they have seen in Northern Virginia, which they're all hailing what a great economic benefit. I'm not really sure what the hell that is, but okay. They've seen some rolling blackouts because they don't have enough energy because Virginia imports as well. And Virginia imports, just like everybody else, from Pennsylvania. And what's the only way to get to Virginia? By Pennsylvania? It's right through our state. And so that is why a lot of this transmission is being built right now. And it's not necessarily fair. So we are going to direct MDE and a whole host of other agencies and groups, incorporate the University of Maryland to make sure that they can study the impacts of data centers. We're going to bring back 2 more criminal procedure bills or criminal law bills. Excuse me. The first is Jamari's Law. We're planning to bring that back, which would increase penalties again. Most of you are familiar with the sad and tragic Jamari Duckett incident that took place a few years back. And I know John Duckett is still struggling with that and has been an incredible advocate. Anytime you go through trauma like that and can rally to advocate, I think that needs to be recognized because that is not an easy thing to do. But he is bringing this to seek justice for his son. And so we are going to help. We are working with Senator Bailey on that law. And then another one is the pension forfeiture, which basically says if you are found guilty to the crime of rape, either first or second degree, while in the course of conducting business, you lose your pension, your state pension. There are caveats there because we realize that there could be dependent children or a spouse that hadn't worked. That would be a little bit more flexibility. So that way that spouse who did nothing wrong would still be able to capture that pension. But there are 2 laws that we intend to bring back. We are hopeful, that we can seek a little bit of justice and make things a little bit more right for the victims. And then this brings me to, frankly, my only ask of the session. We are going to bring a $1 million legislative bond initiative for the YMCA at Great Mills. And I know so many of you were at the groundbreaking ceremony. Unfortunately, I had a kid with hand, foot, and mouth. Something else I'm learning a lot about these days is like I'm sick every other hour. But this has been something, oh man, I don't even want to put a time on the community, how hard you all have worked. My gut tells me it's been 8 years, but I'm probably slighting somebody saying that it's probably been, 20 years. And it started as a community center. And then frankly, thanks to Mike Hewitt, he went up there to the YMCA Chesapeake, created this partnership, and now we're going to be able to deliver this facility here. The $1 million helps finalize the construction costs, and is frankly a really big deal for us. It's not just kids in that area. It's for everybody in the region. It's for after-school programs. It's for programs for seniors and programs for toddlers. And it is going to be an awesome resource for all of us. And I can't wait for that to come online. And we look forward to supporting all the work Tony has done. But I'd be remiss, if I didn't recognize some of the OGs in Marsha Williams, Marsha Greenberg, Janice Walthour, Bert and Beverly John. I love Bert, but more Beverly Johnson. All those people who put so much time into this, frankly, they deserve it. And so keep in mind, when we start talking about the $1 million bond initiative, there's two budgets. There's capital and then there's operating. And the issues are coming from the operating. So this is the capital side of the house. Put this up. This is, I don't know, this is becoming my pet peeve. So this is a delegate scholarship. I want as many kids as possible to apply for this and take the scholarship. There are two parts to this. The first, we are seeing an increase in people applying for the scholarship. But then they get the scholarship, and if you go out of state, can't help you. But kids who are in state, not taking the scholarship. And it happens every year. And for the life of me, I mean, we've called people personally. I don't know, I guess I was a weirdo. I went to somebody's house to try to get them to take it one year. I just want you to take the scholarship. I do not try to cap these things. I do not try to not give it all away. We give away every dollar. Well, that's not true. We try to give away every dollar. It's like Oprah with a car. But for some reason, every year I have money. So again, hit the QR code. I think there's one more slide. I will go back if there's not. Yeah, okay. I'm going to leave it on this so people can scan the QR code. Due date is March 15th. Inevitably, somebody's going to hit me up on March 16th and then like August 15th. I got it. But the due date is March 15th. If you apply early, it benefits you. So please fill out the application, apply. I want to thank the scholarship committee for all their work on that front. I don't actually pick any of the scholarships. I try to remove myself for any kind of politics or favoritism, right? We have a committee that does it, and I really want to thank them for all their work because it's not some easy thing to do. I will put up my contact information. The main thing there is the email. It's just brian.crosby@house.state.md.us. But I will leave it on the scholarship. We'll pull up the questions and kind of run through the questions that you guys have. And we can talk through anything you guys want to talk through. All right. Okay. First one I have is how does your second term compare to your first term? And do you still enjoy your job as a delegate? The job as a delegate is one of the most incredible privileges I've ever had in my life. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. I'm thankful every day that I get to do this. And I am thankful, that I have the opportunity that you all gave me to go up to Annapolis and represent each and every one of you. How does it compare the first term versus the second? Well, in some ways, the biggest difference is personal life. I mean, when I went up there the first time, I ran the first time, I was single. Then, married, and then I had Penny right before last election, and now I have two kids. My 6 o'clocks look a lot different today than they did 4 years ago. It's bath time, it's whatever time to do, play with the kids or get the kids ready for bed, read books. I am immersed in it each and every day. And so that has become more of a challenge, I think, figuring out that time management and that balance, not just between my family time and the legislature, but most people don't realize I still have a full-time business. And I've been fortunate enough to own a company in St. Mary's, but that is kind of ramped up a little bit over the years too, and has taken a lot more of a time commitment, far more than it did, the first term. Completely honest, obviously I had Penny, but none of that was in play the first Tuesday of, the 2022 election. So, I mean, this is all really ramped up on steroids over the last 2 years. Second question, coalition of teachers and unions and groups. I don't know what DSA is. They're beginning a campaign. I know what DSA is. They're beginning a campaign to end the ban on teachers union strikes. Delegate Acevedo is likely to bring a bill in the upcoming session. 2020. So it's basically asking would I support or co-sponsor it. Just a general note for the most part. Just since I've become leadership, I really have cut down on the amount of bills that I've co-sponsored. I understand the right for teachers to organize. I'd have to see the actual bill and what the proposal is before just blindly supporting a bill that maybe comes up. We are aware that there have been proposals or conversations with that on that topic with MSEA in the past, and we have worked with MSEA as they've kind of gone through the process of it. And so I can assure you if the bill is proposed, I don't know if it will or won't. I would have a pretty lengthy conversation with MSEA, as that went through. Generally though, we support the teachers. We do support the teachers, and we have worked, with our local union down here. It's hard to believe it. This will be our 7th session, so all 6 years that we have been in. Next question we have is, how does being vice chair of economic matters help you in securing resources for St. Mary's County and garnering support and legislation that I propose? Honestly, it has had the biggest impact. You want somebody who can be in a leadership role. The bottom line is, politics may be the only industry I know of where we just devalue experience. It's like, oh, that person's been in politics 20 years, they got to go. And then you bring in somebody who, doesn't even know how to find the bathrooms. It has been a whole different experience being the vice chair of the most powerful committee up there. We touch the broadest subjects. We touch the subjects that don't necessarily pull on your heartstrings like judiciary, but have real impact across the state and day-to-day life. And so I am in the room when we decide voting lists for the committee. I am in the room, when we start parsing up funds. And that is a value that I bring to you. Every year I am in this, it is kind of less and less and less about me and more and more and more about the role that I hold. And it is very important for Southern Maryland that CT is the chair and I am the vice chair. It's far more important to the community than it is to me to hold the title. Is, I guess, the best way to think of that. Next question, kind of longer, but let me kind of give you the gist of it. Maryland Federation of National Active and Retired Federal Employees are seeking tax relief for seniors, including the right to itemized deductions, even if deductions are not itemized on the federal return. I'll tell you, I wholeheartedly support that. That is a pet peeve of mine and annoying. You have to do your taxes twice. I don't know why that is. They should just let you do that. I support that one. It's just like an easy win too, to help the community. It's like, why wouldn't we want to just make life a little bit better for our people, not just seniors. That's not just the senior one. That's like across the board. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure any of these other ones that. All right, there is a study. I did read through the study. basically it's saying, it's looking at the cost of seniors to migrate to another state, often due to Maryland taxes. Frankly, I think that some of that is, some of it is true. There are more retirement-friendly states. But I think that it is a more comprehensive look. I know that people who have moved to Florida or North Carolina or even Delaware, and either have come back, not always the case, or they say that the services that they received, whether that is a hospital or an airport, are not the same that they had in that other location. In fact, the two families I know that moved to Delaware still fly out of BWI and still come to Maryland for all their treatment. So, it's quite interesting. When you kind of take the more comprehensive viewpoint of it. I can tell you tax relief is probably not going to be a topic that is going to happen. I would think for the foreseeable remainder of this term. There are a whole host of other topics that are in this question, from supporting behavioral health issues, which I'm working with Senator Bailey on getting another behavioral health center up here, a program up here. This is Harry, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to give you a call and have a longer conversation. But I want to keep this right around an hour. But I hope I answered pretty much the gist of the question. All right, so we will talk. Let me take these ones. All right. Given the apparently overwhelming opposition to the power line proposal affecting northern Baltimore, Carroll, and Federal counties, that's an understatement. Who is behind the state government? Who is behind this in state government, and why does it continue to move forward? This is a very long answer. It's actually not the state government. Maryland pools into what is called an RTO, a Regional Transmission Organization. Our RTO is PJM, stands for Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland. It is now 13 states. We essentially have given up a lot of our rights to PJM. And so PJM, RTOs by and large are a good thing. I know it's not going to come across as this great thing in this context or this answer, but by and large, they are a good thing. And what their job is to make sure that there's enough power, so there's enough electrons for the whole grid, and that the distribution is there as well. And so it is PJM and their models, engineers, leadership that have said you need more distribution. Frankly, we need more distribution in the state of Maryland to go through for Virginia for their data center problem. That is a very large portion of why you need more transmission lines. Public Service Commission will be involved, but ultimately the rights will lay with PJM, and that is who will have the final say. It is going to take a very long time for that to be built. That kind of piggybacks into the second part of this, which is Anne Marie's question, is what prevents data centers from being built in Maryland in the meantime? And at the very moment, frankly, just the availability of power. That's it. But that will change. That will not be a thing come June 1, October 1, whatever. I mean, it's just, we're not just going to let you put these things up. And we're also not going to let you just put up some Bitcoin mining operation around the corner. So, I don't know. There's got to be a whole host of vetting here prior to letting these things get stood up. I think what frustrates me is, even more so than them going up and taking the power off, is some politicians wanting to just give them these grandiose tax incentives to lure them here under the premise that, oh, it's economic development. Not, a data center, sure, there are construction jobs. Maybe it takes a year to build. But after that, you can run a data center with like two guys, like a massive one. So it's not the same economic engine that everybody thinks it is. My biggest concern right now is making sure that the one at Calvert Cliffs, I mean, you can't build it overnight, so I'm not necessarily worried about it. But that is going that it's going to come to roost, so, as they say. So that will come to a head. There will be a significant amount of guardrails. What I think we want to say is, we would love to have your data center here, but if you want to bring the data center, then you got to bring the power, and so you have to build power that is more. And I think that, I'll make it up, double or 1.5 times the amount the data center is going to take. And so what that does is, twofold. One, you get your data center, but two, it starts to tackle the resource adequacy problem. And just so that we're clear, these data centers that are being built are larger than the last two power plants to come off the grid. So it is a massive, massive, massive problem. All right. The other thing I will just say real quick on the energy front, kind of ties back, is because I got another question here. What else is the state doing? We're trying to push forward the SMRs. So that way we have reliable, stable power sources, that can support massive upgrades and massive complexes onto our grid. Next question, why is St. Mary's County requesting a 4th Circuit Court judge? So I'm actually going to pull that bill, withdraw the bill. I will talk about it, though. It is more likely than not going to pass. The judiciary for a long time has been across the state. This is not a St. Mary's County thing. It's across the state. Has been kind of running behind with their judges. There are a whole host of counties that have requested more judges, and I will come back here to why I requested it on behalf of St. Mary's County, that for whatever reason, there is a formula that the judiciary created that doesn't really match what is on the ground, and they've basically sided with that formula. I think in the off season, or not in session, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I use baseball terms to describe this thing. They basically went and reevaluated and talked to the local jurisdictions. So it is not just St. Mary's County that I think needs another judge. I do think St. Mary's County needs a judge, because if you just go back, I don't know how many years ago, not that long, 5. I mean, the caseload has gone from like 25 cases a year to like 90. Part of that is the state's attorney, and I don't care, good, bad, indifferent, your call, doesn't settle cases. So every case now is going to trial, and that puts a difficult strain on the judiciary. Additionally, you weren't getting a trial for almost 9 months in circuit court. And then, unfortunately, the passing of Judge Stamm exasperated that problem. And it's an issue. And we have we have judges from other counties that we could sometimes pull down to St. Mary's to kind of plus us up. But a lot of those that I've talked to aren't doing it anymore. And so, it's interesting. So it's, the increased caseload, one less judge, is frankly, the reason for the ask for the additional circuit court judge. I am not going to pursue that bill because when I started it, I did not know about this other proposal. But essentially, all the counties are going to be relooked at. And under that proposal, I think we get a fourth judge. And so I think a lot of counties are going to end up with multiple judges to help clear out their dockets and make things a little bit more streamlined for citizens. I mean, the bottom line is when you bring a court case, as a citizen, shouldn't be waiting 2, 3, 4 years for things to settle. Albeit maybe that's an exasperation, or an exaggeration, but okay, it shouldn't take a year to get a court date. And that's not right. And it's not good business. So, we will take a look at that bill when it comes out. It is not going to be mine. It's going to come from the Judiciary Committee. We'll inspect it, and I believe we are going to co-sponsor it if it does in fact add another job or another judge to the county. And that is all the questions that I see because we are 5 minutes over. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I know that you all have busy lives, although we're all snowed in, so maybe not. I don't know. Probably not a bad way to spend a cold, snowy evening. But hopefully everybody stays safe. I don't know. Last time I checked, schools were still open in the county. Ren, if they're closed, I'm sure you're monitoring that way closer than I am. You can put that in the chat.
Closed. They're
Right, there you go.
closed.
They're closed. So they closed as I sat here and rambled for an hour. But I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Please apply to the scholarship. And if you have any questions during session, don't ever hesitate to ask. That is why we're here. Thank you all so much.